Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Hey y'all, hey. So today we're going to meet Mr. Julian Bond. His first name is Horace. So it's actually Horace Julian Bond. But like every good Southerner, you go by your middle name when the first one ain't really fitting. Now, Mr. Julian Bond was born January 14, 1940 in Nashville, Tennessee, and died on August 15, 2015. He was a U.S. Black legislator and a Black civil rights leader in several civil rights organizations. Now let's get to his childhood. Julian, his father's name was actually Horace Mann Bond, and he became the president of Lincoln University of Oxford, Pennsylvania. So he moved the family to an environment that was mostly white. So they moved from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. And the oldest, Horace Sr., Mr. Bond, caused a stir because he protested segregation, segregated facilities such as, water fountain and bathrooms there in Pennsylvania. And I mean, I did not know Jim Crow was in Pennsylvania. Wasn't Pennsylvania like the main state that was full of abolitionists once you get north of the Mason-Dixon line? But your girl learned something there. Anyways, young Julian, he did not deal with any racism while he was in elementary school. He was the only white student with a whole bunch of, he was the only Black student surrounded by white children, and he did get an award in the 6th grade as the brightest person in class. He went to George School nearby Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for his high school education, and he stated he counted like very few encounters of racism there. Now, when he graduated, his father actually moved them down to Atlanta, Georgia, because he took a position as the president of Atlanta University. And Mr. Bond decided to attend Morehouse College in Atlanta, and he started college in 1957. Now, at Morehouse, Bond became the coordinator and spokesman of civil rights demonstrations, yet to be under an organization. He started the Atlanta Student Civil Rights Group called Committee on Appeal for Human Rights. So that was the name of it, Committee on Appeal for Human Rights. Baby, why y'all coming up with these long names? Anyways, in 1960, Ella Baker, who was Martin Luther King's secretary and technically secretary of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, again, long name, SCLC, invited students from all around the South Atlanta area to meet them at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, to coordinate efforts and to learn more about nonviolence. So Martin Luther King Jr. was there. He was the president of SCLC, and he was also there with Minister Reverend James Lawson Jr., and they were staunch opponents of violence. They believe in nonviolent resistance and encouraged the students to do the same, and they asked the students to join SCLC. They were like, "Nah, fam, that ain't what we doing. We gonna form our own thing." And this includes Mr. Stokely, who was there as well, Stokely Carmichael. So Stokely Carmichael and Julian Bonds and some more young college students got together and they formed SNCC. Instead, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. What is up with y'all with these long names? Like SNCC. But anyways, Bond was appointed communications director for the SNCC, and he kept his position until 1960, from 1960 to 1966. So he kept his position for 6 years, and he was very active in SNCC. He dropped out of college, and he didn't complete his degree, his bachelor's at Morehouse, until 1971. Now, I don't feel too bad about not finishing my doctorate yet. It's been 10 years too, boo. Anyways, in 1965, Mr. Bonds won a seat in the Georgia state legislature, but Georgia State refused to see him because his organization, SNCC, had issued statements opposing the Vietnam War and United States involvement in it. So the voters, they kept reelecting him because they will hold a special election. They're like, we ain't seen this person, special election. the voters will keep on voting for him in the special election and the regular election in 1966. And Georgia state legislator banned him each time. Now, finally, in December of 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the exclusion was unconstitutional, and Mr. Bond was sworn in January 9th, 1967. Now, Bond served in the Georgia House of Representatives from 1967 to 1975, and in the Georgia State Senate as senator, of course, from 1975 to 1987. Dude, you was a senator and going to school. A little shame on me. Now, in 1986, Bond did give up his state Senate seat to run for the U.S. Congress, to be a representative there. However, he lost to his fellow SNCC member and colleague, John Lewis. In addition to his legislative activities, Bond served as the first president of the Southern Poverty Law Center from 1971 to 1979, and he also served as the president of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Again, y'all with these long names. And he stayed in that role from 1978 to 1989. I'll tell you one thing. This dude was a committed person. Because, baby, I don't stay in a role for no more than 4 years. You're going to have to pay me or I'm leaving. I'm sorry. It ain't about me. Then he went over and became the national organization's chairman. So from 1978 to 1989, he was the president for the Atlanta chapter. I think I said that. But nationally, he became the chairman from 1998 to 2010. Let's see. And I wondered, I'm like, now that kind of lapse with Miss Myrlie Evers, but I think she served to 1998, so he followed up after her. And then it states that in the 1990s, Mr. Bond served as a visiting professor at several universities, including Howard and University of Virginia. He also narrated the PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, documentary about civil rights movement. And he also, that's where I've seen him from. And he also hosted the TV show America's Black Forum. He wrote articles and he had national newspaper columns. Mr. Bond died at the age of 75 in his home in Florida. So give it up for Mr. Bond. This is how I knew him, or remember him anyways. Didn't know him. I remember seeing him on things like PBS. Big fan of PBS documentaries. I remember seeing him on like CNN News and things like that. So he also was a big proponent of civil rights, supporting gay rights, whatever you feel about that. He was like, I don't care, baby. Black people need to get together. All minorities need to get together and support one another. And it's kind of interesting. The reason why I decided to do civil rights this year was because, one, our civil rights are being threatened. Literally, like 47's administration is fighting birthright citizenship. And it's very interesting to me that they're fighting birthright citizenship and using Native Americans as an argument, because in the early 1800s, Native Americans were not considered citizens. Mind-blowing. To deport other people and deport people who were born here so they don't automatically get citizenship, that is a right that they're trying to take away. And right now, it's prime to go to the Supreme Court, which we know are very, very, very Republican leaning. Now, I thought Republican and Democrats were at least on the same basis as the constitutional rights, but we're seeing here that a lot of our constitutional rights, amendments to the Constitution, it's been challenged. And so that is why I decided to do the civil rights activists. Hold them up, hem them up in court, regardless of whatever. But also, yes, we need to be out here protesting and letting these people know, baby, we ain't here to stand for no nonsense and no tomfoolery. And one thing that you have to do is organize, regardless of how you feel about every other thing. Put your differences aside and come together as minorities, please. That's my tangent. See you tomorrow. Bye.